Today is Monday, April 13th, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. This week, I'm walking through how the advisory board operating system works in practice, not as a theory, not as a pretty diagram, but as a board level operating model. And more importantly, the sequence of how operates matters. So let me pull the model in the screen so we know we have the visual cue of what we are talking about. This is a full model. And today we're going to talk about the top section, which is a commercial acceleration to scale. And this involves brand, people, and partnerships. So let's highlight this section first and let's go to our conversation, right? So first thing is commercial acceleration here, and then growth and capital on the right hand side. On the bottom, we have our controls and resilience, which is our systems. And finally, on the left, the transformation and reinvention. And this is where you have your edge, your innovation, your next evolution in the organization. And sometimes people confuse that with a big bang activity, big bang results. In reality, sometimes innovation means a very slightly tiny change that allow the company to stand out in the market, right? So I'm going to pull on Friday the whole system together so you can see how it operates. And this is where I come in as a board advisor, by the way. I build a rotating international advisory board around this model, based on the milestone of your company. So you get the specialist capability you need in a fraction of the time of hiring one executive without the big consulting overhead, without a talent locking, and with the option to swap members every 6 months as the project evolves. Because remember, the business, as they reach certain milestones, the talent pool also change. So somebody that was their profile, business experience, expertise, connections were absolutely brilliant 6 months ago or a year ago. Today might be somebody sitting at the board or the executive meeting or with you as a founder, and you sometimes wonder who or what is this person doing here, because really it's not providing the brilliant value that provided before. It's not their fault, by the way. It's because actually they were and they are excellent in certain areas, but in other areas they can provide opinions or ideas, but effectively they are not really pushing as hard or as good as they did before. So today's point is about scale. From the assets lens, remember I always all about assets. Today is mainly about the revenue assets that's supported by brand, the people, and the partnership assets. Because your partnership, your ecosystem, your connections in terms of distribution, resellers, and added value resellers, or the channel where you distribute your products or services are part of your assets. Um, and this is a problem most boards or executive teams and founders have. If it's really not the lack of activity, it's the false scale, right? You might have a lot of activity, but scale doesn't really materialize in a way or how. So what signs you have that this scale is not really materializing? Let me give you a few ones. So revenue is moving without enough visibility, right? So the customers are coming in with insufficient margins. That's another sign. The other sign is pipeline looking healthy without enough certainty. So say, oh, we have this very good pipeline, but how certain are those deals in the pipeline? And other one is partnership create volume without enough control, right? So they go and how's it called, spray and pray, as they call it. So they send a massive campaigns that are in the market. This is a spray, and then they pray for something to come back because they don't have that certainty. That is, it doesn't mean that a big volume is going to bring any results. So these are all the hidden risk that you start to identify when you have false scales. Now, and this is pretty much, or this is another one, which is accidental scale. So an accidental scale is even worse, I would say, because it's not controlled; it's an accident. So it looks good in a board or the executive mean, or you when you're meeting with you as a founder. It sounds good on the earning calls. And here's a funny thing, because people say, "Oh, but we don't have earning calls. We are too small. We don't." Not officially as earning calls, but you are reporting to somebody or someone as your group of investors, your shareholders, your partners. So you have your earning calls, but actually are not as official as a publicly listed company in Wall Street. And what happened 6 months later? The same growth story turns into a forecast miss, right? So because it was an accidental scale, it was not something you were designing and controlling. So you have the margin pressures, the working capital strains, and the board or your executive team and yourself as a founder suddenly asking why nobody saw that sooner, right? So let's use some statistics from the UK National Statistics Centre, the Financial Council Authority, etc., etc., because this is not something that happened to you only. It's happened and had been recorded by many official organizations, including EY, KPMG. They do these reports and statistics quite frequently. I want to bring some of them back because if you understand the business principles of these reports or this guidance or these issues that they provide to the market, and by the way, they are all free in the internet, so you can download it and study it yourself. When you start to find out actually the problems that you think that are exclusively to you, all of a sudden start to be kind of happening almost everywhere. And I give you some stats here. Now, this is another interesting thing about this. Even if I'm focusing in the UK, you can find the similar information. I mean, in terms of the statistics, the statistics, the surveys, the polls, the results, etc., in many other countries and jurisdictions, because this is studies that are done by the countries and the organizations because are needed to understand where the things are going, right? Unfortunately, not many companies are using them, or they are reading through and say, "Oh yeah, right, okay," and they move on. And I think that is a massive mistake because actually they literally are giving you information for free on how you can look into your business based on what is going on in the market. And from there, you can start structure very interesting ideas and by design of how the capital works, what are the challenges that other people are having, how they are solving them, if they are providing that information or not. But at least you have a clue, you have an idea. The success, as one of my mentors says, success leaves clues, right? And having information and put it in the right order also gives you a massive advantage compared to anybody else. So the first problem that I want to mention today is that scale is being judged by movement. And we mentioned this in different ways today, not by quality. And this is coming from the Office for National Statistics that says the business's dynamism measured by job relocation was lower in 2024 than 2001 in every industry. Oh, by the way, it's every industry, and this is a national statistic, right? So, and also they say that productivity growth remains uneven across firms. So, actually, different firms, actually, you cannot average what is going on. That is a warning sign for you as a board member, as an executive team, or as a founder. A market with weaker dynamism, so things are not moving, makes weak growth stories easier to hide and harder to fix, right? Because if the things are not moving, then you can say, well, yeah, we don't disclose very, or we have no way to disclose, or actually we're purposely hiding why we are not growing, but it's harder to fix at the same time, right? Now, the second problem that we can find is is that markets is still pushing weak visibility. Um, and with this pushing is punishing at the same time. And this where is that coming from? I tell you in a second. It's coming in the profits. So if you are if you are not you have a weak dynamism, then you have a weak visibility, and this is punished, right? Punished. What I mean punished is in capital, in growth, in capacity to unlock these situations. And here's coming from the EY survey that in listed businesses, and they issue a report where they say that 240 profit warnings happened in 2025. That is 4 months ago. So, and 17 of the listed firms warned at least once in the last 12 months, right? 17% of the listed firms have a warning profit or a profit warning in last year. And 33% of this warning, I said, well, okay, but yeah, okay, we have warnings, it's listed companies, but 1/3 of this warning are coming from contracts, order cancellations, and delays. So there you have the clue there. So if large enterprises, right, 240 of them in the UK are reporting that 1/3 of their profit warnings are coming from contracts, order cancellation, and delays. Look at your business. It doesn't matter if you are a not listed company, a small organization, 20 employees, 50 employees, 10 employees, or a 250 employees. What's going on with your contracts, your order cancellations, and delays? Is this a profit warning for you or not? So you see how you can, this is a business principle. So if you see a pattern on the top of the productivity lines in the country, then you start to look down, because they are not operating isolated from the rest of the world. They have a very, very well intertwined and gnarled relationship with the rest of the country and the world. So if for them these profit warnings are coming from contracts, order cancellation, and delays, how that is cascading to your level, right? So that is what happens when the top line is larger than the system underneath, right? So you have a big, big, big banner, but underneath what's going on. So you have a learning there right away that you can say, I can look back into my business to see, understand where are my contracts, my order cancellations, and the delays, and how it's affecting the profits. Not the operation, not the service, not just the profits. How is and that from there you can start to reverse engineer how to do a good work in terms of actually how I can start to handle. And this is where the design is coming from. It's not coming from reinventing the wheel. It's to look in what's going on in different organizations, different places, and then bring it back to your organization and say, all right, now I understand. I can start to do things. I can start design things to unlock situation, bottlenecks, delays, contract problems, cancellation, where they're coming from, because sometimes the cancellation are not coming just because the customer cannot pay or they change their mind. Probably the problem is on your distribution or your seller or your partners, or how have been sold. And people, it's not that they have buyer remorse. The procurement say, this is not allowed. We cannot accept this order. Whatever is the reason. So the cancellation is not because the customer cannot. Sometimes the problem is in your own organization or your distribution channels. So it's a very interesting exercise to go through and understand what's going on. And I'm going to mention a third problem, which is also a statistic, and this is very important. So is that the stress does not stay inside the sales teams all the time. I mentioned that sometimes the problem is the cancellation, delays, and contracts are coming from your own teams. Well, that stress not always is there, stays with them. Is things that is across the whole company. So, for example, the insolvency report provided that almost 2,000 companies are insolvent in February 2026 in the UK this year, right? Insolvent doesn't mean they cannot operate, but it's solvent. And the insolvency service also says the insolvency levels increase at levels of 2008, 2009, when the recession happened, right? So we are coming back like 20 years back or so in terms of the insolvency levels. So, but at the same time, the Office of National Statistics, they say the investment fell 2.5% in Q4 25. That is 4 months ago. So what is telling us? That the boards are being forced to grow very, very carefully, not casually anymore. It's not like as I mentioned, spray and pray. Now you have to design how you're going to grow. So in other words, what I'm telling with all the statistics and this situation is very simple. Imagine a lot of firms are trying to drive faster with a crack windscreen, right? So is moving. You have a motorway, you have a vehicle, is moving, but you cannot see far enough ahead to steer properly, right? So you might be in a motorway, you might be in a amazing vehicle, etc., etc. But if your windscreen is cracked, you can imagine just not if it's raining only and your wipers are not working, you already have a where I'm going. Is this safe? Is it not safe? Where what, is it going to be dangerous? And probably you travel that route many times, but still this crack windscreen or the rain on your windscreen and with the wipers that doesn't work is very dangerous. And so you start to design how you move ahead to make sure that you arrive to destination in time, with budget, and delivering what you need to deliver. So the question now becomes a different question. If growth is real enough to feel promising, right, but messy enough to feel risky, the windscreen, the rain, etc., what does the board or your executive team or yourself as a founder need to fix first? Let me provide you a few ideas. As a board advisor, I would propose to consider the following things. These three things. The first, break growth into quality. Look at demand quality, margin quality, and conversation quality. Do not ask only, are we growing? Ask which customers offer and or channels will be still back in the market when the things tighten next quarter, right? So which customers, offers, and channels will we will still back if the market tightens the market. So which are the guys who are going to work with if things start to get tightened, because they are clear in the mission, in the vision, what they do, how they do it, and it's aligned with us. That is how the board or your executive team or yourself as a founder start separating real scale from busy scale, like a spray, and then pray that something come back. The second thing I would suggest is test the assets around the revenue line. So brand, people, partnership. If the message to market is muddy or is not very clear, if sales depend on a few heroic individuals, or if channel partners bring volume without discipline, you don't have a real scale engine. What you have is dependencies on people and partners. You don't have a scaling design. You have dependencies. It's all dependent on people. And the third thing I would suggest is make predictability a board discipline or your executive team discipline or a discipline for yourself as a founder, not a management aspiration. So one forecast, one definition of pipeline health, one agreed view of pricing power, conversation slippage, churn exposure, and cash time. So all that have to be and in the simplest possible way, but actually gives a very good decision process. And this is something interesting from KPMG that says that 71% of UK CEOs have already adopted their growth strategies, right? And 79% feel more pressured to ensure long-term prosperity. So what is this saying? That at the end, the mood has changed. So the boards or executive teams and or as a founders, you need a clear growth, not a louder and messy one. It's good for marketing, by the way, but you need to have a design how you're going to grow. And this is not to say, oh my God, we have to redo everything. No, people are already doing it. And you can look into this KPMG survey that the CEO surveys. Also PwC have an interesting survey about CEOs, and look what they are thinking in terms of designing and having a cleaner growth. This is not one or two isolated cases. 71% of them and almost 80% of them, they feel more pressure to ensure the long-term prosperity. They're looking into long-term prosperity besides the noise that is around them today. So what is a hard question then? Who helps the board or you as in part of the executive team or you as a founder to do that quickly with enough depth and without waiting months for one perfect executive hire? That is when I came into the equation, and what you gain working with me is three things: business outcomes, differentiators, and risk reductions. In terms of outcomes, I use the model that you have in front of you. It's the advisory board operation system model to turn commercial acceleration into managed board systems. So revenue becomes more predictable before the company pushes harder on capital systems or transformations. And meaning revenue predictability of revenue is very important. If you want to raise capital, you have to control that, and also that allows you to grow, to have the edge, the innovation, the transformation, what is next down the line. In terms of differentiator, I build a rotating international advisory board around the milestones in front of the company, not about something actually, oh, this is working well in your industry. No, in front of your company is tailor-made for you. And say, well, we don't want that because we need something actually transferable. Of course we do that. It's not a tailor-made thing that actually nobody else understands, and then you are sticked or hooked with us forever. It's something actually is repeatable, is documented, and then can be transferred to the next generation or the succession plan in the business. That gives you specialist capability across revenue, strategy, governance, partnerships, and operating rhythm in a fraction of the time it takes to hire one executive without being the big consulting overhead or the talent locking, right? Because you don't want to be locked with one people or one person, and then a month or a year later say, what are we going to do now? We cannot fire this person, right? Anyway, in terms of risk reduction, members can be swapped every 6 months as a project evolves, because this is an evolution, it's a design to growth, to scale. So the board keeps the right expertise for the stage it is in. So rather than carrying the wrong cost structure and advice for too long, right? Because we mentioned last week, statics teams tends to do the same thing again and again and again, and they default when the pressure or the challenge happen in front of them, they default in their own group thinking that been carrying for many years. We have the capability to start to look into different ways to solve the same problems without falling or falling back into the same things. So one action you can take home today, and it's doable in 30 minutes or less. Before your next meeting, ask for one-page scale map showing the top 5 growth assumption, the 3 biggest commercial friction points, and the single metric that best prove repeatability. So let's pause it here for today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow I will go further with the growth and capital and show why a good commercial story still breaks down when debt, equity, and control are allowed to evolve by accident instead of design. And all this week is all about design, architecture, and intelligence in your business. So if you're not executive director, a chair, a CEO, CFO, or you have an executive team, or you are a founder and you would like to explore an international advisory board to make growth more predictable, sharpen the commercial engine, and prepare the company to a cleaner capital and stronger resilience, set a 30-minute call with me, and so I can understand what is your position, what you're looking for exactly today, and how we can help you with that. Excellent. Have a fantastic day, a fantastic week, and we'll talk tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.